Well, hello everyone. We're the 3 gigs minus 1 today. This is Craig. He represents the owner. Jim is not here, who represents the general contractor, and I'm Paul. I represent the subcontracting community. We're 3 guys in glasses, 3 gigs. Today, this is a short. We're going to be talking about flow down provisions of the contract. So by definition, what is a flow down and what does it matter and how is it implemented and so on?
You got something there?
Yeah, I do, because you wrote something about this for me at a point in time, probably 100 years ago.
I think it was.
I said, hey, Craig, help me out, help me understand this. So the clause basically in a contract from the owner to a general contractor would say that the subcontractor is bound to the general contractor to the same extent that the general contractor is bound to the owner. So this clause, from the owner's perspective, seeks to impose on every subcontractor the same responsibility and liability carried by the general contractor.
It just flowed out of me.
Isn't it amazing, right? So that's a good working definition, though, of what a flow down provision is. A clause in a contract from the owner to the general contractor that says there are certain things in this contract that have to flow down and become a clause in a subcontract.
Right, and they're not, and it's not intuitive. You can't sneak this in. Your contract that you're looking at is going to have the word flow, or as in it's going to define that intent in the document. It may define it for the whole document. It may define it for a couple of elements of it. But if it's not in that document, then your contract that you're looking at doesn't have a flow down.
And the essence of it is the owner is passing the risk not just to the general contractor, but all the way down through the contracting community.
Correct.
Okay.
It's risk assignment.
Right. So what kinds of clauses could we expect to see in a subcontract that would represent a flow down?
The ones that tend to be highlighted that we would expect to be in a subcontract have everything to do with critical timing.
Okay.
Communication.
So notifications.
Notifications. Timing of submittals, timing of RFIs.
Okay.
Anything to do with communication almost always will be a flow down.
Right. And so far,
you
I'm on
are
board
obligated,
with that,
contractor, to do it this way, and you better make sure your sub has the same agreement in their contract.
Okay, so far I'm on board. I'm good. All right. So what are some other things then? Like, I've understood, for example, that liquidated damages could be a flow down. Now I'm going to have to go, whoa, wait a minute.
Right. Liquidated damages, many contracts will punt on making LDs a flow down. I think there are definitely contracts that will try and make it a flow down. The pushback, of course, is that we're going to UGC are late. And you might be late because of you, or you might be late because of one sub.
But it wasn't me.
but it wasn't him.
Right.
And so we can't charge your sub for LDs because we don't have a contract with that sub. We have a contract with you, Jim, and so you're going to pay this. And I'm going to take a perspective that the LDs are a project-wide specific impact. Right. This is a $40 million project. The LDs are going to be within the context of a $40 million project. And if many subs try to have that shoved into their subcontract, if the painter has a $200,000 contract, they're not going to take that.
No, absolutely. So it's fair to say that not every sub is going to want to see every one of these flow downs without some revision.
Right.
So in addition to those, we can always expect payment terms and conditions, performance standard deadlines, insurance requirements, labor compliance, prevailing wage requirements,
labor compliance, very much
liquidated
public
damages,
kind of things.
on and on.
Yep.
The impact that it has on subcontractors is that unless we actually negotiate hard for these to make sense, it can have this kind of ambiguous meaning.
Yes.
And the ambiguous meaning is, to the same extent that you would expect the general contractor to build your building, that would flow down to me. And it would say, to the same extent that you expect the general contractor to build your building, in the absence of him doing so, then it falls to the subcontractor to do so.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that in concept or in the spirit of the law.
But what are the details?
But the details.
Right.
I'm an underground contractor.
Right.
I don't want to provide carpenters or electricians, and I shouldn't have to.
And that's a really important point, because again, there will be contracts between an owner and a general contractor where it is fairly ambiguous as to what the flow down obligation is. You're just going to have to make sure that that sub understands that everything you've agreed to, they're going to agree to.
Right.
The reality is that GC now needs to negotiate something with the sub, and there better be some flow down to the sub. But now that GC is the one who's got to figure out
the reasonableness of it, right?
Right.
So, in a nutshell, to wrap up, the best practices for flow down provisions. Just go back and forth here. I'll start by saying.
I got to talk?
No, you don't get to talk. No, you can talk all you want.
I'm the owner.
I know, right? You get to talk all you want to. So I'm going to say negotiate hard up front to make the clause actual. Specific to the trade.
Yeah, it's got to be specific. Okay. Flow down that you want them to be about a thing, and let's nail that thing down.
Right, exactly. I would say make it clear that it is a flow down, so that it is not just coming from the general contractor's wants and wishes, it's coming from the owner.
Right. Make sure that you are agreeing to something that you actually have control of. So, a big catch-all, a big net always is just delays. And I have seen many, many contracts where a general contractor set up the flow downs for delay very ambiguously. And so when that GC got in trouble with me, and I'm looking at LDs, that GC goes to their subs, all of them,
right,
and says, based on the language in your contract,
we can charge everybody.
Everybody gets to take a piece of this.
Right. So I want to write that out.
The painter is paying the LDs as well as the underground guy, and the primary issue was the framer.
Right. Yeah, and I've been stuck with those as well, which is why I learned to negotiate hard. I think another best practice is just realizing that in construction contracting, that the risk should be taken by the party that can accept that risk with the least amount of negative impact.
Right.
And if all the parties are working toward that, then flow down provisions are a good thing. A necessity, obviously, but it shouldn't be an undue burden on any of the parties.
Right. And, being part of the evil empire and just trying to say not quite that evil, to Paul's point, I don't have any control of building that building at all. In fact, the contract says I can't interfere with building the building. I can't dictate how to do things. And so it's fair for me to want to be able to say the people who are actually touching, moving, scheduling, and thinking about the day-to-day building of this building, you have the risks.
Exactly right.
I don't want those risks because you're doing all the thinking.
That's right. So, final thought. Flow down provisions are a real thing. They're a necessity. It's the way the owner shifts the risk to the general contractor, but beyond that, to ensure that the subcontractors are on board and not leaving any gaps in the risk.
Right. And we have a much more verbose talk about this if you just want to really get into the weeds. If you don't, thanks for watching. This is the 3 gigs minus one, so we're a gig short. And we'll see you next time.